Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about the life and the chart of Charles Manson, who just passed away on November 19th of 2017. Charles Manson is known for the horrendous murders, the Manson murders, that occurred around the end of 1969, around August 8th. He somehow instigated these murders through his cult leaders to fulfill what he had trained them to do. So he was the instigator of these murders, but actually he did not do them himself. So it was in the late 60s that he had this cult where they would take lots of LSD and he would empower these people to feel a sense of power through this cult, through the Manson family, as they called it. So he had these people come together with a sense of family and empowered them, made them feel special. And through this, they felt empowered. People that had no power about themselves, had no family, and they felt connected to Manson in terms of a family. And through the use of drugs and a sense of empowerment, he had these people that surrounded him that adored him. So Manson was able to manipulate and control their minds. So we're going to see through his chart how he was able to do this, and what you can look for in a chart to see the mental instability and control. Now, going back to an early age, Manson was at an early age in and out of correctional facilities when he was young, because at an early age his mother abandoned him. His mother was a prostitute. Of course, he never had a father. And his mother was actually known to have sold him for a pitcher of beer. And aside from that, what it feels like to never have a family, to never feel a sense of protection or love. This was at the forefront, the culprit of why many people do not feel a sense of connection or love or security. And people are constantly searching for that sense of connection to others. So going back to these murders, as we go through his chart, I will give some renditions of some fascinating details that you probably didn't know about what happened throughout this. So looking at this, let's just start looking at his chart, and I will unfold a lot of matters that pertain to this and were relevant in this process. So let's put up Charles Manson's chart. Now, Charles Manson's birthday was November 12th, 1934. The time of birth was 4:40 p.m. in Cincinnati, Ohio. He has Aries as his ascendant, therefore Mars is the ruler of his chart. So Mars becomes all-powerful, and people with an Aries ascendant are pioneers, they're go-getters, they're action-oriented. So wherever Mars goes is very important, and his natal Mars is conjunct Neptune to the exact degree, 21 degrees of Leo, in the 5th house. So this Mars in the 5th house is the house of intelligence. It's the house of the mind. It's the house of those who give advice to others or advisors. So this is a very powerful Mars in the sign of Leo, which is the sign of leaders, rulership, but it's conjunct Neptune. And Neptune is the planet of deception, deceit, denial, and illusions. So you can see how the ruler of the chart is delusional with Neptune in the house of the mind. And this is the kind of leadership that this person will bring about. So looking at Neptune and Mars, they are in the sign of Leo, which makes the Sun, ruler of Leo, the dispositor of Mars-Neptune. And it disposits to his all-powerful 7th house. The 7th house is the house that people can get other people to do things for them. So they're in a position where they lead others. And he has 4 powerful planets in the 7th house. He's got Sun, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury, all in the sign of Libra in the 7th house. Remember, powerful 7th houses can get others to do your dirty work or do work for you. It doesn't have to be bad. But an example of somebody that has 4 powerful planets in the 7th house is Adolf Hitler. You can see that he got others to do his dirty work as well, such as Joseph Mengele, who really carried out a lot of the horrendous things that Hitler perpetrated or organized. So you're going to see that this is power. So going to his 7th house, where he has Sun, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury, you're going to find that the Sun is debilitated. So the planet that is the dispositor of Mars and Neptune is debilitated in Libra. So it's weakened in some respect. But you're going to find, first of all, that there are 2 major Raja Yogas in the 7th house. What is a Raja Yoga? It's a yoga of kings, people that have power. And so notice that the Sun is ruler of the 5th, and it is conjunct Venus, ruler of the 7th. Whenever you have a planet that rules a triconal house and an angular house, or sometimes called Kendra house, then we have your Raja Yoga, which means power. So the triconal houses are 1, 5, and 9, and the angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10. And whenever you have 2 planets that rule one of each, you have Raja Yoga. Venus, ruler of the 7th, an angle. Sun, ruler of the 5th, a trine. Raja Yoga, empowerment, and through empowering others, being in the 7th house. You have Jupiter, ruler of the 9th, a triconal house with Venus that rules the 7th house. Once again, this is another Raja Yoga, yoga of kings. Another powerful yoga that is here in the 7th house is the fact that he has Venus in an angle in its own sign. This is one of the Mahapurusha yogas. Pancha Mahapurusha yogas means 5 yogas of great men. So the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas are the planets when they're in an angular house called a Kendra, and they are either in their own sign of rulership or exalted. That's the requirements. So Venus is in an angle. Remember, the angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10, and it's in its own sign of rulership. So this is one of the Mahapurusha yogas, and they can only involve either Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn. These are the only planets that make up the 5 of the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas. So Venus, whenever you have this, whatever planet, what it represents will be stamped all over that person's life. And they are the essence of what that planet is about. Venus in Libra is musical, artistic talent. And when Venus is in an air sign, such as Libra, that's strong, it usually is musical. And what you're going to find is that Charles Manson always wanted to be a rock star. And he actually had some great dealings with one of the Beach Boys, Mike Love. So he and Mike Love actually cut some songs together. And what they did was they would have wild and crazy parties at their manager's house. And what happened was they made some songs, and Mike Love, one of the original founders of the Beach Boys, said, hey, he's really good, let's do some stuff with him. But the manager said, absolutely not. I don't like this guy. And they were using his house for a lot of these wild parties and recordings. So, Charles Manson had these aspirations to be a star, but Terry Melcher, which was the Beach Boys manager, he said no. So, Charles Manson headed out for Terry Melcher. And let me tell you something about Terry. His mother was Doris Day, one of the famed movie stars of the 60s. She was a bright, shining star with Rock Hudson, did tons of movies. But she was very pure. She didn't drink. She was always so optimistic and very religious. But she told her son, Terry, I have had a powerful premonition about your house. You have to move. There's something wrong. I don't know exactly what it is, but you've got to leave. And Terry, respecting his mother, did. So you see, these Manson murders actually occurred to people that were in the wrong place at the wrong time, because Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski had just bought that house, and right after Terry had moved. And this is where all the recording and the parties went on, because Manson thought Terry still lived there, and he was going after the Beach Boys manager because he had a vendetta out for him. So it wasn't even meant to happen to Sharon Tate, because these Manson murders, which killed 9 people very violently. Sharon Tate was 8 months, almost 9 months pregnant with a newborn baby. And she begged for her life, and they repeatedly stabbed her, heartless, and murdered all of these people that were gathering over with Sharon Tate while Roman Polanski was on a trip. Jay Sebring, which was her hairdresser and her fiance from before, and Abigail Folgers in a different house was killed in 2 separate nights. But what Charles Manson did was he orchestrated this horrendous thing to get back at Terry, but at the same time, he was convinced of these incredible race wars that he thought were imminent and happening. And this was the culprit of a lot of political things behind what he did. Helter Skelter, which was about these prominent race wars that were happening in the late 60s. And they took the blood of these victims and wrote pigs and Helter Skelter all over the walls. Nobody knew what this was about. And everyone was in drastic fear. And it was all over Charles Manson wanting to be a rock star, that he had this vendetta and anger and killed all these innocent people being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And got other people to carry out his dirty work for him. He didn't even do it. So another thing you may not know, Charles Manson, when he was found guilty, he was given the death sentence. And a month after, California changed their laws where they no longer gave death sentences, so he wasn't to be put to death. And he just got a life sentence. And Sharon Tate's sister has appeared in court every year to prevent him from being released every time his parole comes up. So this is a part of some of the background you may not have realized with all of this. But looking at this, going back to his chart, the Raja Yogas, we have to really understand what it is with his mother, because this was really at the culprit of why all this happened. So going back to understand his past and his mother, you must always look at the 4th house. The 4th house is the mother. Going to the 4th house, you see Ketu in the 4th, and it's in the sign of Cancer, which is the sign of family. Ketu being in the sign of family disturbs family. And when you see wherever K2 is, it means something's missing, something's lost. And this is how he felt about his family and his mother. He never had protection, security, or love. And this was a part of what the derangement was about. Now notice the fourth house ruler, which is the moon. And this further represents the mother. And the moon all by itself, regardless if it rules the fourth house, is the mother. Notice its placement in the 10th house in Capricorn. I might add, moon in Capricorn can make a very detached mother ruled by Saturn. But it is with two first-rate malefics. It's with Rahu and the moon. And it is in Capricorn. And Saturn, oh my God, Saturn is all-powerful by being in an angle in its own sign, another Mahapurusha Yoga, which this one's called Asasha Yoga. Venus being in the 7th house, representing all of his creative charm, eloquence, and power, is called a Malavaya Yoga. So he's got two of these Mahapurusha Yogas, Saturn and Venus. And I might go back and mention one powerful thing about his Venus. Remember, he was a singer and a musician. Venus, ruler of the 2nd house, which rules the voice, is all powerful in that Malavaya Yoga of creativity in the 2nd house that he empowered and got other people to do his work. This is Venus, ruler of the 2nd. They listened to his voice. Plus he was a singer. And don't forget, the other planet in that 7th house is Mercury, his communication skills. Mercury is with Jupiter. It's all about his spiritual thoughts and trying to get everyone to think about world and humanity, which it was really an ulterior motive, all of that he had underneath it all for his own claim and power, which when you go to the 10th house, again, looking at Moon Rahu, he wanted to be famous. Moon in the 10th represents fame. Moon with Rahu, it represents his fame and him being in front of everyone. So Moon Rahu's extreme fame, but what he's famous for may not be the thing he wants to be famous for. But going to that stellium, which means 3 or more planets together in a house, in the 7th house, is his power to control others through his voice and communications. But going back to his 10th house, where he has the moon, Rahu, Saturn. Now this is actually all powerful. And when you see that he also, with this Sasha Yoga, meaning Saturn becomes all powerful, controlling, manipulative, organized, focused, but he has a Kala Sarpa Yoga. And that means all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu. Now this excludes the outer planets, of course. But looking at this, you're going to find that this Kala Sarpa Yoga is so powerful because it intensifies all the other yogas when you have this yoga. And it represents great extremes of highs and lows. So looking at this, Kala Sarpa Yoga, you're going to find that Saturn at 28 degrees, Rahu at 11, exactly conjunct the moon. And when you have the tightness of an orb of a conjunction matters. Remember, he's got Neptune exactly conjunct Mars, and he's got Moon exactly conjunct Rahu. And the moon is the mind, and it is the mother. So he has these obsessional qualities of Rahu Moon, obsessions, compulsions, and it's out there in the world to see in the 10th house. But he also has the Kala Sarpa Yoga. And notice that Saturn at 28 degrees and Rahu at 11, because the nodes travel backwards, Rahu's already crossed over Saturn. So it is in the back of Saturn. What does that mean? It's burnt, it's ruined, it's dried up. So even though Saturn has the Sasha Yoga and power, Saturn is weakened by this considerably. And it's caused most of his problems. Most of his problems by the Saturn being burnt in the 10th house. So moving on, looking at this, I want to talk about where he's going with this, because this is obviously with Rahu moon, an obsessional nature of the mind, which the moon is the mind, and the loss of never being protected with security of the mother. That's what you see with this. So moving on, during the time of these horrendous murders, which happened August 8th of 1969, he just entered his Jupiter Mahadasha. Now, looking at Jupiter in the 7th house, it doesn't make that much sense. But therefore, here's where you go with it. You look at the Navamsa chart to see further reference of the second part of life and where the chart is taking you, because the Navamsa chart is the fruit of the tree. Will what's promised in the Navamsa, in the birth chart, produce its results? It's seen in the Navamsa. And notice in his Navamsa, he has K2, Mars, and Neptune in the 4th house. This is the house of the heart and soul. Protection, security. He had none. And there was this crazed mind and opposed this K2, Mars, Neptune in the 4th house. In the Navamsa is the moon Rahu in the 10th. Once again, here is the fame. Here is the reference to being in front of the public eye. Moon Rahu stays in the 10th house in the Navamsa. But during the time of these heinous murders, Jupiter, he went into Jupiter's Mahadasha. It's in the 8th house in the Navamsa. Very powerful, because this was the trend of death and change and difficulty throughout the next 16 years that he just entered into this Mahadasha. And to further get a little further reference, always remember when you're looking at a birth chart, don't forget to look at things from Chandra Lagna, making the moon the ascendant. So looking at going back to his birth chart from Chandra Lagna, the moon, his Mars, Neptune, go to the 8th house from his natal moon. That's significant, because the 8th house is the house that can deal with addictions and obsessions as well, and death. And that's where he went with it. Do you realize that he not only killed these 9 people in the summer in August of 1969, but he accused and sentenced for killing 2 other people before that. So he killed in total, murdered 11 people, maybe not with his own hands, but he was the culprit and the reason why. So going to the last final days of his life, he was in Mercury Jupiter's Mahadasha, which is the last phase of Mercury's Mahadasha. So looking at that, he has Mercury and Jupiter conjunct in the 7th house. The 7th house is a Maraka house. The Maraka houses are 2 and 7. Maraka means killer. And when someone dies, you will find that they are usually in the dasha of these 2 of these planets that are relative to the 7th house, either in the 7th or the 2nd house, or ruler of the 2nd and the 7th house. And both his Jupiter and his Mercury are in his 7th house. But interestingly enough, at the time of his death, which was around November 19th of 2017, transiting Jupiter was exactly on his sun. It was exactly on his Jupiter approaching his sun. So his Jupiter, all these planets in the 7th house transiting Jupiter was there, but it was exactly, he had a Jupiter return, Jupiter on Jupiter. So this could have been an indication of the finality of his suffering in this life, this horrendous ordeal. So he was released from the torture of this life. But notice that transiting Rahu and Ketu, going back to that, transiting Ketu was in his 10th house, just crossed over his Saturn, which was burnt from being burnt in the tail of Rahu, the Kala Sarpa Yoga. And Rahu is in Cancer in his 4th house, which is the end of life. So you can see that these transits of Rahu and Ketu were really what took him out. But the transit of Jupiter was very interesting to release someone. Jupiter is commonly in death charts, most common of all, because it's a release of this world. And so really going back to give a full analysis of what this is all about, you can see in this chart the representation of a cult leader, someone that is consumed with the mind and able to empower and take control of others by the 7th and this 10th house. You see, people who are obsessed with cult leaders, they empower other people that are powerless, that they make them feel special. They make them feel connected where they felt disconnected in their life. They have no sense of family. And all of a sudden, they feel connected and they feel empowered. This is what cults are all about. And this, by going back and analyzing and looking at the chart of Charles Manson, can give us a better reference point. Because Rahu and Ketu right now, as they stand in the year 2017 and 18, Rahu being in the sign of Cancer represents family. So there's going to be more of a pull towards cults because people feel separate from this connection. And these are things such as ISIS, things that people feel a connection and are empowered through others that have this ability to empower and make other people feel special. So you're going to see more cults and more things coming about in the next few years. So with this analysis of Charles Manson's chart, we can better see what's at the culprit of cults and better prevent them coming about again. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information and a transcript on this analysis, you can go to my magazine, which is astrologicmagazine.com. And if you would like a reading from me, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And if you would like to learn Vedic astrology, go to my university, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.